My name is Selena Lawson. I'm 30 years old. Last Tuesday, I sat in my office in Portland and listened to 43 voicemails from my family, people I hadn't spoken to in 7 years. Not one said, "I'm sorry." Every single one said the same 2 words. 7 years ago, I walked out of my mother's house with $200, one suitcase, and the clothes on my back. My family told everyone in our town I was unstable, that I needed professional help, that they were worried sick. They weren't worried, they were relieved, and they would have stayed relieved if my sister hadn't Googled my name last week. Before I get into what those 2 words were and what I did about them, please take a moment to like and subscribe. But only if this story actually means something to you. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from tonight. Now let me take you back to Thanksgiving 2019, the night everything broke. Ridgewood, Ohio. Population 4,000 and change. The kind of town where everybody knows your business before you do, and the gossip travels faster than the internet. Thanksgiving at the Lawson house meant my mother's china on the long table, 15 relatives squeezed elbow to elbow, and my father pouring wine like silence was something you could drown. I was 23. Working 2 jobs, waiting tables at Rosario's and answering phones at a real estate office downtown, saving every cent. My sister Meredith had just been promoted to marketing coordinator at a regional insurance firm. Same salary, new title. My mother stood at the head of the table and made a toast. To Meredith, our shining star, always making this family proud. 15 people raised their glasses. I raised mine too. Nobody asked what I was doing. Nobody asked about my classes, my savings, my plans. I was wallpaper in my own family's house. But I'd come to that dinner with one question, a simple one. I waited until dessert, when the plates were being cleared and the noise had settled into that warm hum of relatives talking over each other. "Mom," I said, "I was wondering, is there any money left in Grandma Ruth's education fund? She told me she set aside money for each of us." The table went quiet. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that tells you a grenade just rolled under your chair and everyone saw it but you. My mother set her coffee cup down. Slowly. She looked at me. And then she looked at every single person at that table. And when she spoke, her voice was sweet enough to rot teeth. "See? This is what I've been dealing with. She's been acting erratic for months." I didn't respond. I sat there with pumpkin pie going cold on my plate and 15 pairs of eyes landing on me like I'd just cursed in church. My Aunt Deborah reached over and patted my hand. "Honey, your mother just wants what's best." I excused myself, went to the kitchen, started washing dishes, because that's what I did at every family gathering. I cleaned up while everybody else celebrated. Muscle memory. The faucet was running, but I could still hear voices through the doorway. My mother's voice, dropped low, talking to my Aunt Patricia. "Ruth's fund went to Meredith's sorority dues and her car. Selena doesn't need it. She's not going anywhere anyway." I turned the water off. Grandma Ruth had set up education accounts for both of us. $12,000 each. She'd told me this herself, 2 years before she passed. Sat me down at her kitchen table, held my hands and said, "This is for your future, sweetheart. Nobody can touch it but you." Somebody touched it. I walked back into the dining room. My mother was refilling her wine. "That money was mine," I said. "Grandma left it for me. You had no right." Diane Lawson didn't flinch. She set the bottle down, folded her hands, and tilted her head the way she always did when she was about to rewrite reality. "You're being dramatic, Selena. You always do this. You always make everything about money. I'm asking about $12,000 that was left to me by name. And I'm telling you, you sound just like your grandmother, always stirring things up." That stopped me, because my grandmother Ruth was the kindest person I ever knew, and my mother said her name like it was something to scrape off her shoe. 10 minutes later, my mother called everyone into the living room. I knew what was coming. I'd seen this play before. Different holidays, different triggers, Same choreography. Diane Lawson in the center of the room, performing concern for an audience that never bought a ticket but always took a seat. "I've tried to keep this private," she said, dabbing at the corner of her eye with a napkin. "But I think everyone needs to know. Selena hasn't been well. She's been having episodes. I've been covering for her, but tonight—" She gestured toward me like I was Exhibit A. I looked at my father. Gerald sat in his recliner with his hands on his knees, staring at the carpet. He said nothing. I looked at Kyle, my younger brother. He was leaning against the wall, arms crossed. He gave a small nod. Not to me, to her. I looked at Meredith. She was scrolling her phone. 15 relatives in that room. Not one of them said, "Selena, are you okay?" Not one said, "Diane, that seems harsh." Not one. I went upstairs, packed a suitcase, $200 in tip money from Rosario's, a winter coat, and a small wooden box that Grandma Ruth had left me, the one I'd kept on my dresser for 2 years without opening, because opening it meant admitting she was really gone. I walked down the stairs and through the living room. My mother's voice followed me to the door. "If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back." I didn't slam it. I closed it, gently, because I knew I'd never open it again. Outside, snow was falling on Ridgewood, Ohio. I had a suitcase, $200, and nowhere to go. That was the last time I heard my mother's voice. For 7 years. I bought a Greyhound ticket at the station on Route 40. The furthest I could get for what I had was Portland, Oregon. 38 hours on a bus with my suitcase between my knees and a box of my dead grandmother's things on my lap. I didn't sleep. I just watched America scroll past the window. Cornfields, flatlands, mountains, rain. And tried to remember the last time someone in my family had asked me a question that wasn't a complaint dressed up in a question mark. I couldn't. The woman next to me on the bus was heading to Boise to see her grandkids. She offered me half a sandwich outside of Omaha. I thanked her and ate it in 3 bites. She didn't ask why I was crying. She just handed me a napkin and looked out the window. Sometimes strangers give you more grace in 10 seconds than your family manages in 23 years. Portland, December. I spent my first night at a women's shelter off Burnside. Second week in a hostel that smelled like bleach and bad decisions. I had no credit history, no references, no local connections. Just a work ethic that my family had spent 23 years exploiting and 0 years appreciating. I found a job within 2 weeks. Receptionist at a small consulting firm called Hale and Associates. 8 employees. Cramped office on the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse in the Pearl District. They helped communities apply for development grants. I answered phones and sorted mail. It wasn't glamorous. It was a paycheck. 3 weeks into my new life, I checked Facebook for the first and last time. My mother had posted in the family group, "Please keep Selena in your prayers. She's going through a difficult time, and we just hope she's safe wherever she is. We love her, and our door is always open." 112 reactions, 26 comments, all saying things like, "Praying for her," and "You're such a strong mother, Diane." Kyle's comment sat right at the top. She always was the dramatic one. 47 likes. I deleted Facebook that night, and I didn't look back. Let me be honest about what no contact actually costs when you're 23 with nothing. No savings, no health insurance, no emergency contact on any form. I wrote NA for 2 years until I had someone worth listing. No birthday calls, no Christmas cards. No one to tell when I got the flu so bad I couldn't get off the bathroom floor for 2 days, and thought about calling an ambulance, but couldn't afford one. And the thing nobody warns you about, the permanent low hum of knowing that somewhere in Ohio, 15 people are telling a story about you, and you can't correct a single word of it. I was the family ghost, the cautionary tale Diane told at church brunches, the reason she could dab her eyes and collect sympathy like change in a jar. But here's what silence also gave me. The first morning I woke up in Portland, really woke up, not startled awake by anxiety, I lay in my hostel bunk and realized something was missing. It took me a full minute to identify it. Diane's voice. That constant internal narration, "You're not enough, you're not enough," had gone quiet. Like someone had finally found the off switch on a radio I'd been hearing my whole life. At Hale and Associates, Margaret Hale noticed me before I noticed myself. I'd reorganized the entire client filing system in my first week. 3 years of scattered folders, cross-referenced and color-coded. Nobody asked me to. I just couldn't stand the chaos. Margaret walked past my desk on Friday, stopped, came back. "You reorganized 3 years of client files in 4 days. Who does that?" I looked up. Someone who needed something to control. She didn't laugh. She didn't pity me. She pulled up a chair and said, "Tell me what else you see that's broken." While I was filing grants in Portland, my mother was filing her version of me in Ridgewood. I learned all of this later. From my Aunt Patricia, from a high school friend who tracked me down years after. But I'll tell you now so you understand the full picture. Within a month of my leaving, Diane had told the women's ministry at First Presbyterian that I was receiving care at a residential facility. She never said which one. She didn't need to. In Ridgewood, residential facility means one thing, and everybody fills in the blank with the worst version. My old apartment above the hardware store on Main Street, I'd left most of my things there when I walked out. Meredith took it over, sold my furniture, kept my winter coat collection, told the landlord I'd abandoned the lease. Gerald, my father, handled the neighbors. He'd stand in the driveway with his hands in his pockets and say, "We just hope she's safe, wherever she is." Voice cracking at the right moment. Eyes looking up at just the right angle. He never called me, not once. Kyle posted on Facebook at least 3 times that first year. Vague, pointed statuses. Family isn't about blood, it's about loyalty. Some people would rather run than grow up. Praying for people who throw away everything over nothing. Each one got dozens of likes. Each one was about me. So that was my family's version of Selena Lawson. A troubled girl who snapped at Thanksgiving, abandoned her family, and ended up God knows where doing God knows what. A tragedy they could carry like a handbag. Pretty enough to show in public, useful for collecting sympathy. For 7 years, I was a ghost. And they wrote the obituary while I was still breathing. Year 1 in Portland was survival. Year 2 was the first time in my life I made a plan that belonged to me. At Hale and Associates, I moved from reception to project coordination in 6 months. Margaret gave me a small grant application to manage, a community garden project in outer southeast Portland. I turned it in 3 days early with a revised budget that saved the client 11%. Margaret read it twice. Then she handed me a second project. I enrolled in Portland State University's online business administration program. Classes at night, work during the day. I paid tuition out of every paycheck. Small bites, no loans. My apartment was a shared 2-bedroom in Selwood with a roommate who worked nights, so we barely overlapped. I cooked every meal. Rice and beans on Monday, pasta on Tuesday. Whatever was on sale at Winco on the rest. Bought clothes at Goodwill. Cut my own hair for 2 years. There was no montage, no swelling music, just alarm clocks and spreadsheets and falling asleep with a textbook open on my chest at 1 a.m, waking up at 6 to do it again. I didn't have a plan to become successful. I had a plan to never feel powerless again. The success was a side effect. Margaret never treated me like a project or a charity case. She treated me like someone who showed up early, stayed late, and noticed things other people walked past. When I flagged a billing error in a client's account that would have cost the firm $6,000, she promoted me to junior consultant. "You caught something my accountant missed," she said. "Your accountant doesn't check the math twice." "And you do?" "I check everything twice. It's how I grew up." She didn't ask what that meant. She didn't need to. Margaret Hale was the kind of leader who understood that the hungriest workers are the ones who've been starving the longest. And the best thing you can do is stop talking about their hunger and start putting food on the table. I was hungry, and she kept feeding me work. I finished my degree at the end of year 3. No ceremony, no cap and gown. I printed the diploma at a FedEx, framed it with a $10 frame from Target, and hung it above my desk at work. Margaret saw it the next morning. She knocked on my door. By then, I had an office, small, with a window that faced the parking lot, but it was mine. "Congratulations," she said. "How's project manager sound?" Hale and Associates had grown from 8 people to 35. We'd expanded into housing development consulting, grant writing for tribal communities, and small business incubation programs. Margaret promoted me to project manager, and I took over a team of 10. That same month, Jess Parker walked through our front door for an interview. Jess was 30, sharp, and had a laugh that could fill a room. She'd worked in nonprofit communications in Seattle before burning out. We connected immediately, not over work, but over the thing neither of us usually talked about. 3 weeks into her employment, Jess and I were eating takeout at my desk after a late deadline. She asked why I never mentioned family. I told her. All of it. The Thanksgiving, the fund, the voicemails that never came, the Facebook posts, the door closing behind me in the snow. It was the first time I'd said it all out loud to another person. Jess listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for 10 seconds. Then she said, "Yeah, mine told people I died." I stared at her. Car accident. That was the cover story. Easier than telling their church friends their daughter was gay. We sat with that for a long time. And then I cried. For the first time since leaving Ohio. On my 28th birthday, I opened the box. 5 years. I'd carried it from Ohio to Portland in a suitcase, moved it from the shelter to the hostel to the shared apartment to my own place. It sat on my nightstand every single night, and every single night I didn't touch it. Because opening Grandma Ruth's box meant admitting 2 things: that she was gone, and that she was the only person in my family who had loved me without conditions. Jess was the one who pushed me. "You've been staring at that box for 5 years. It's not a bomb. Open it." So I did. Inside, a strand of pearls, the ones she wore to church every Sunday. A photograph of me at age 6, grinning at the camera with a gap in my front teeth. It was the only photo of me as a child that I owned. My mother never hung pictures of me in the house. Meredith's school portraits lined the hallway. Mine went into a drawer. And a letter, folded once. Grandma Ruth's handwriting, shaky, careful. The cursive of a woman who grew up believing penmanship was a form of self-respect. "Selena, if you're reading this, it means you had the courage to leave. Good. I wanted to leave my whole life, but I was afraid. Don't be like me. Don't hold this family together at the cost of yourself. You don't owe anyone your life." I read it 3 times. The 3rd time, my hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. All those years, every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every family dinner where I bit my tongue and passed the potatoes and pretended the pecking order didn't exist, I thought I was honoring Grandma Ruth's wish. Keep this family together. She'd said it at holidays. She'd said it when I'd called her crying after arguments with Diane. She'd said it so many times it became my operating system. But she'd said it in front of the family, under Diane's roof, with Diane listening. This letter, folded into a box, hidden like contraband, was what she'd actually meant. There was a postscript. "The education fund. I left instructions with my lawyer, Mr. Weatherby. Ask Patricia. She knows." I sat on my bed with the letter in one hand and the photograph in the other, and I understood something I'd been circling for years. Grandma Ruth hadn't asked me to keep the family together. My mother had. Ruth's letter was the truth she'd been too watched to say out loud. Year 6, Margaret sat me down and offered me a title I'd never imagined on a name tag: Chief Operating Officer. Hale and Associates had grown to 120 employees, 2 offices, Portland and Seattle. Our community development programs had impacted over 50,000 families across the Pacific Northwest. We'd been featured in a regional business magazine, invited to speak at conferences, and recognized by the governor's office for our tribal partnership work. I wasn't rich. I want to be clear about that. I drove a used Subaru. I lived in a one-bedroom in Northeast Portland. I had a retirement account, a savings account, and health insurance that covered dental. By Ridgewood standards, I was doing fine. By my own standards, the girl who slept in a shelter 7 years ago, I was breathing air I never thought I'd reach. The magazine interview came out in October. A regional publication ran a profile on women in community development leadership. My photo, my name, my title, my story, the sanitized version, about starting as a receptionist and working my way up. Margaret threw a small office party when the article went live. Jess bought a cake that said, "Cool for school," in blue frosting. My life was quiet, steady, full of people who respected me and work that mattered. I didn't look for my family on social media. I didn't drive through Ohio on business trips. I didn't send anonymous checks or birthday cards. I let them go, completely. Some people might call that cold. I call it survival. When you grow up as the person everyone blames, you learn that distance isn't cruelty, it's oxygen. And I'd spent 23 years holding my breath. For 7 years, they let me go too. Not a single call, not a letter, not even a message through a mutual connection. My mother told the town I was in a facility, and the town believed her, and nobody thought to check. Nobody drove to Portland. Nobody Googled my name. 7 years of nothing. Until a random Tuesday in March 2026, when my sister, for the first time in her life, typed my name into a search engine. She wasn't looking for me. She was looking for money. You know what's interesting? Not one person in my family ever Googled me. Not once in 7 years. They never checked, never wondered. They were so committed to the story that I was unstable, that they never even looked. I think about that sometimes. How easy it is to never question a lie when the truth might make you uncomfortable. If you're still here, hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to get a lot more uncomfortable. 6 months before the voicemails, I got an email at work. The subject line said, "From your Aunt Patricia, please read." I stared at it for 20 minutes before clicking. Patricia was my mother's younger sister. Growing up, she was the quiet one at family gatherings. Always there, always pleasant, never rocking the boat. She'd watched everything that happened to me and said nothing. For years, I held that against her almost as much as I held the rest of it. Her email was 3 paragraphs, no excuses, no preamble. She said she was sorry she'd stayed silent. She said she'd been afraid of Diane. Your mother has a way of making people disappear from her life, and I wasn't brave enough to be next. Then she told me something that made my jaw tighten. Grandma Ruth's education fund had been handled by a lawyer named Weatherby in Columbus. Ruth left clear instructions: $12,000 to Meredith, $12,000 to Selena, separate accounts, separate signatures required. My mother forged my signature, consolidated both accounts, moved everything to Meredith. Patricia knew because she'd been Ruth's witness on the original documents. I sat with that information for a long time. $12,000. Not life-changing money. Not anymore. I'd made that in a quarter at Hale & Associates by my 2nd year. But the forgery, the deception, the fact that my mother stole from me and then called me crazy for asking about it, that was worth more than any dollar amount. That was the architecture of my entire childhood in one transaction. I didn't file charges. The statute of limitations in Ohio was 6 years. Gone. Patricia added one more thing at the end. Your mother is chairing the Ridgewood Community Fundraiser this spring. The whole town will be there. I didn't know yet why that mattered. I would. 2 months later, Margaret came into my office holding her phone like it was a winning lottery ticket. You know Pastor Daniel Briggs? Runs a church in some small town in Ohio? I didn't react, but the name Ridgewood was already ringing in my head like a fire alarm. He's on the board of a community development nonprofit out there. They're doing a big fundraiser, annual thing apparently, and they want a keynote speaker. someone who works in community development, has a personal connection to small-town revitalization. He reached out through our network. She looked at me. I recommended you. You grew up in a small town in Ohio, right? I hadn't told Margaret which town. She didn't know my family. She didn't know that the fundraiser's chair was the same woman who told 200 people her daughter was in rehab. The town is Ridgewood, I said. Great, so you know the area. You'd be perfect. I almost said no. The word was right there, sitting on my tongue like a reflex. And then I thought about Grandma Ruth's letter, about closing that door in the snow, about 7 years of being a ghost in a story I didn't write. I'll do it, I said. Margaret grinned. Fantastic. I'll send your bio to Pastor Briggs. After she left, I sat in my office and Googled Ridgewood Community Fundraiser. The event page listed Diane Lawson as committee chair. The venue was the community center on Maple. The date was March 15th. I picked up my phone and texted Patricia. I know about the fundraiser. I'm the keynote speaker. Her reply came in 30 seconds. I know. I didn't tell your mother. Be ready. I was going back to Ridgewood, on my own terms, through my own front door. 2 weeks before the fundraiser, on a Tuesday afternoon, my sister sat down at her kitchen table and typed my name into Google. I know the details because Patricia was there. She told me everything. Meredith was 32, freshly divorced, and drowning. Her ex-husband left 2 years earlier, took the dog, half the savings, and all of the ambition. She'd been coasting on the house, but the mortgage was 3 months behind and the bank was circling. She needed a co-signer for a new loan. Diane's credit was wrecked. Gerald was retired, pulling Social Security. Kyle still owed $40,000 in student loans. Meredith needed someone with a real income and a clean financial record. She thought of me the way you think of a tool you tossed in a junk drawer years ago, not with affection, but with sudden practical interest. She typed, Selena Lawson. First result, LinkedIn. COO, Hale & Associates, Portland, Oregon. Second result, a business magazine profile. Rising leaders in Pacific Northwest community development. Third result, my company bio. Professional headshot. Conference speaking credits. A quote from Margaret calling me the operational backbone of everything we've built. Patricia said Meredith stared at the screen for a full minute without blinking. Then she called our mother. Mom, you need to see this. See what? Selena. She's... A pause. She's a COO of a real company. She's been in Forbes. The sound on the other end of the line, Patricia told me, was not joy, not relief, not pride. It was a sharp inhale, the kind a person makes when the story they've been telling for 7 years catches fire in their hands. That's impossible, Diane said. She didn't even finish. She couldn't finish the sentence, because finishing it would mean admitting the lie had been hers all along. The calls started that evening. I was in a conference room in Portland, wrapping up a quarterly review with my team. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Then again. Then it didn't stop. By the time the meeting ended, I had 43 missed calls, all from Ohio area codes. Some numbers I recognized, some I didn't, all from the same 24-hour window. I went to my office, closed the door, and listened. Voicemail 1, Meredith. Breezy, practiced, like she was calling about brunch. Selena, it's Meredith. I know it's been a while. Listen, I need to talk to you about something important. Call me back. Voicemail 7, Gerald. Halting, uncomfortable. Honey, it's Dad. Your mother and I, well, the family's been going through a rough patch. We could really use your help. Give us a call when you can. Voicemail 15, Diane. Clipped, controlled. Selena, this is your mother. I don't know what you've been doing out there, but family is family. We need to talk. Voicemail 23, Kyle. Chewing something. Yo, Sel, it's Kyle. So, looks like you're doing pretty good out there. That's cool, that's cool. Hey, listen, I've got this business idea and I could really use some backing. Just a little something to get started. Hit me back. Voicemail 38. Meredith again. The breeziness was gone. Her voice cracked on the last word. Selena, I know you're seeing these. I need help. Please, just call me. Help me. Help me. 2 words, over and over, in different voices, different tones, different levels of desperation, but always the same 2 words. Not, I'm sorry, not, I was wrong, not, I miss you. Help me. 43 voicemails, 0 apologies, and every single one wanted the same thing. I listened to every single one, start to finish, some of them twice. Then I set my phone on my desk, leaned back in my chair, and looked at the ceiling for a long time. I called Jess. She picked up on the second ring. My family found me. Oh, a pause. Which part hurts? The part where I'm not surprised. Jess let that sit. She knew better than to fill silence with comfort when what I needed was space to feel the weight of it. 7 years. 7 years of building a life from $200 and a bus ticket. 7 years of therapy, hard work, and learning to trust people again. And the first time my family reaches out, it isn't to say they missed me. It isn't to ask if I'm okay. It's to ask what I can give them. I wasn't an ATM when I was 23 and broke, but apparently I'd become one now that I had a title next to my name. I set my phone to do not disturb. I didn't call back. I didn't block the numbers either. Blocking felt like a reaction, and I was done reacting to the Lawson family. Jess said, "What are you going to do?" "Nothing different. I've got the Ridgewood fundraiser in 2 weeks." "You're still going?" "It's my job, Jess. I don't rearrange my career because my family can't rearrange their behavior." She let out a small laugh. "Okay, COO, go get 'em." I hung up and looked out my office window. The Portland rain was tapping against the glass, soft and steady, the way it always does in March. Constant, but manageable. I'd been managing worse my whole life. They didn't take silence well. 3 days after the voicemails, an email arrived in my work inbox. My professional email, the one listed on our company website. From diane.lawson.ridge@gmail.com. Subject, your mother. Selena. After everything this family has done for you, you can't even return a phone call? I've spent 7 years defending you to people who asked where you were. I told them you were getting help. I protected your reputation. And this is how you repay me? I always told people you were selfish. I guess I was right. I read it twice, saved it, didn't reply. The next day, a LinkedIn message from Meredith. "I see you're doing well for yourself. Congratulations, I guess. But family is family, Selena. I need a co-signer on a loan. It's not a lot. You owe us that much." Oh, that word again. The Lawson family currency. Then Kyle. Because Kyle never could stand being left out of a performance, posted on Facebook. Public. Tagged half the extended family. Funny how some people get a fancy title and forget where they came from. Family supported you your whole life and now you're too good to answer your phone. Hashtag ungrateful, hashtag family first. 41 likes, 12 comments, all agreeing. I screenshotted everything. The email, the LinkedIn message, the post, not for legal reasons, for myself. For the mornings when I might wake up and wonder if I'd imagined it all. If maybe my family wasn't that bad, if maybe I should have tried harder. Evidence that I wasn't the problem, evidence I could hold in my hands. That evening, Patricia texted, "They know you're the fundraiser speaker. Your mother found out from the event program. They're planning to be there." So now I knew. They weren't just calling. They were coming. Can I be honest with you for a second? When I read Kyle's post, "Family supported you your whole life," I actually laughed. Out loud. In my office. Because the funniest lies are the ones people tell so confidently they forget they're lying. If that hit a nerve, if you've ever been called ungrateful for simply wanting to be treated like a human being, drop a comment. Tell me your 2 words. I'll read every one. March 15th. I flew into Columbus, rented a car, and drove southeast for 90 minutes through flat, gray Ohio farmland. Ridgewood looked smaller than I remembered. The hardware store, the diner, First Presbyterian, white steeple poking up through bare trees like a finger telling you to hush. Everything was the same, which somehow made it feel like I was the one who'd changed dimensions. The community center on Maple Street was decorated like someone had thrown a wedding for the entire town. White tablecloths, rented centerpieces, a banner across the entrance. Building tomorrow together. Ridgewood Community Fundraiser. 200 seats. Nearly all full by the time I arrived through the speaker entrance on the side of the building. I signed in at the registration table. A volunteer, a woman about my mother's age, someone I half recognized from church, glanced at my badge and smiled. "Ms. Lawson, welcome. Pastor Briggs is so excited to have you." I wonder if she connected the name. I wonder if she remembered me at all. I wore a charcoal gray blazer, white blouse, hair pulled back. My speaker badge read, Selena Lawson, COO, Hale & Associates, keynote speaker. Through the doorway, I could see the main hall. Tables of 8, each one filled with the people of Ridgewood, teachers, shop owners, church members, neighbors. The people who'd heard my mother's version of me for 7 years. And at the center table, in a navy blue dress with her hair freshly done, smiling and greeting guests like she owned the building, my mother, Diane Lawson, committee chair. Gerald beside her, quiet as always. Meredith in a new outfit she probably couldn't afford. Kyle near the buffet, scrolling his phone. My whole family, 20 feet away, with no idea who was about to take the stage. Pastor Daniel Briggs was a tall man with kind eyes and a microphone voice that filled the room without effort. He'd been the one to reach out to our firm. He'd never met me. He didn't know my history with this town. He stepped to the podium at 7:15. "Good evening, Ridgewood. Thank you all for being here tonight. This fundraiser is about community, about building something bigger than ourselves." Polite applause, the clink of silverware on plates. Our keynote speaker tonight is someone who embodies that mission. She grew up in a small town, started her career from the ground up, and now serves as Chief Operating Officer of Hale & Associates, a firm that has impacted over 50,000 families across the Pacific Northwest. She was recently featured in regional Forbes coverage of rising business leaders. Please give a warm Ridgewood welcome to Selena Lawson. Applause. I stepped out from behind the curtain and walked to the podium. The spotlight hit me, and for 1 second, just one, I was 23 again, standing in that living room while my mother told 15 people I was broken. Then I looked out at the audience, 200 faces, some I knew, some I didn't, and at the center table, 4 faces I knew better than any others on earth. Diane's smile evaporated. Her mouth opened slightly, closed, opened again. She gripped the edge of the table with both hands, her knuckles going white against the white tablecloth. I watched her eyes dart sideways, left, right, scanning the room to see who was watching her reaction. Even in shock, her first instinct was audience management. Gerald set his water glass down so hard it sloshed onto the linen. His face went slack, and for a moment he looked like a man who'd just remembered something terrible he'd done a long time ago. Meredith's hand went to her chest. Her mouth formed a word. Maybe my name. Maybe just air. But no sound came out. Kyle stopped chewing mid-bite. His fork hung in the air like a question mark. The audience stood. 200 people. The same neighbors, the same church members, the same teachers and shopkeepers who had been told for 7 years that I was unstable, who had prayed for me on Sundays, who had whispered about me at the post office, rose from their chairs and gave me a standing ovation. And my mother sat frozen in the center of it, the only person in the room still in her seat. I let the applause settle, adjusted the microphone, took a breath. "Thank you, Pastor Briggs, and thank you, Ridgewood. It's been a while." Light laughter. A few people exchanged glances, the ones who recognized me. I delivered my keynote, 20 minutes on community development, funding structures, grant strategies, the power of grassroots organizing, data, case studies, results, professional, polished, the kind of speech I'd given a dozen times at conferences. And then, near the end, I shifted. I grew up in a small town like this one. Some of you might remember me. A murmur. I left this town 7 years ago with $200 in a suitcase. I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because staying was costing me something I couldn't afford to lose. Silence. The kind that has weight. I was told I was unstable. I was told I needed professional help. The truth is, the help I needed was distance. And this career, this work, it started because someone in Portland looked at me and saw a person, not a problem to manage, not a story to tell at church, a person. I paused. Let the silence do the work. Community development isn't just about grants and infrastructure. It's about seeing people, really seeing them, not the version that's convenient, not the version that fits someone else's narrative, the actual person standing in front of you. I didn't name anyone, I didn't point at my mother, I didn't even look at her table, I didn't have to. A woman in the third row, Mrs. Callahan, who'd taught me English in 10th grade, pressed her hand to her mouth. The man next to her, her husband, turned and stared at Diane's table. The whispers started like a match catching. That's Diane's daughter. The one she said was she's a COO? When I finished, the room stood again, longer this time. Some people were wiping their eyes. My mother didn't stand. She sat perfectly still, her napkin clenched in both fists, her face the color of raw steak. The networking portion was supposed to be wine and small talk. It became something else entirely. I stepped off the stage and into a crowd. People I hadn't seen in 7 years shook my hand, touched my arm, said things like, "We had no idea," and "Your grandmother would be so proud." Mrs. Callahan hugged me so hard I heard her back crack. Diane cut through the crowd like a blade. She arrived with a smile so tight it looked bolted on. 20 people within earshot. She wasn't going to make a scene. She was going to perform. "Selena, sweetheart." Her arms opened, a hug for the audience. "What a surprise! Why didn't you tell us you were coming?" I didn't step into the hug. "You had my number, Mom. 7 years." The smile flickered. She lowered her voice, stepping closer. "You embarrassed this family. That speech of yours. I didn't name anyone. If people drew conclusions, that's not my responsibility." Meredith appeared at Diane's shoulder. "We've been trying to reach you, Selena. We need to talk about the family." "I heard your voicemails, all 43. Not one apology. Just help me." "That's not a family reaching out. That's a collection call." Gerald materialized behind them, voice low, eyes on the floor. "Selena, let's not do this here." "Dad, you had 7 years to not do this. You chose not to." Kyle, trailing behind. "You think you're better than us now?" "No. I think I'm done being less than you needed me to be." I stepped back, straightened my blazer, nodded once to Pastor Briggs, who was watching from near the stage with an expression somewhere between concern and understanding. Then I walked toward the exit. Steady, even. No running, no slamming. I'd done enough of that 7 years ago. I sat in my rental car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, engine off, hands on the wheel, breathing. Inside the community center, I could see people through the windows, standing in clusters, looking toward the door I'd just walked through. The Whisper network was running at full capacity. By morning, every kitchen table in Ridgewood would have a new version of Tonight. I called Jess. "It's done. I said what I needed to say." "How do you feel?" "Like I'm 30 years old for the first time." She laughed. I almost did too. I drove back to my hotel in Columbus. That night, I opened my laptop and wrote one email, addressed to my mother, my father, Meredith, and Kyle. "I'm writing this once. I'm not co-signing any loan. I'm not funding not sending money. I'm not funding anyone's business idea. I'm not angry. I'm clear. If any of you want a real relationship with me, it doesn't start with a voicemail asking for help. It starts with an honest conversation. A real one. Where someone says what happened, out loud, and acknowledges it. Not, we did our best. Not, that's in the past. Not, family is family. An apology. Specific. For the fund. For the lies. For the 7 years of telling this town I was in a facility when I was building a career. Until that happens, I wish you well. But my answer is no. I read it twice, changed nothing, pressed send. Then I closed my laptop, turned off the light, and lay in a hotel bed 3 miles from the town I grew up in, listening to Ohio's silence for the first time in 7 years. No triumphant music, no tears, just the quiet satisfaction of a woman who'd finally stopped negotiating with people who never valued the deal. A week after the fundraiser, I called Mr. Weatherby, the lawyer in Columbus, the one Grandma Ruth had named in her letter. He was retired now, 81 years old and living in a condo near Easton. But he remembered. "Your grandmother was a remarkable woman," he said. "She came to me specifically because she didn't trust your mother with those accounts. She made me promise to keep the original documents." And when my mother forged my signature? A long sigh. I didn't find out until later. By then, the statute of limitations was running. "I'm sorry, Selena. I should have done more." The $12,000 was gone. Legally, there was no recovery, but I'd been thinking about what Grandma Ruth would have wanted. Not revenge, not restitution. Legacy. I contacted Portland State University's financial aid office, set up a small annual scholarship, funded from my own salary, for students who were estranged from their families. Students who checked no family contribution on their FAFSA, not because their parents couldn't pay, but because their parents wouldn't. I named it the Ruth Lawson Community Scholarship. The university published the announcement on their website. 2 paragraphs. My name, my grandmother's name, a photo of the 2 of us from the box, 6-year-old me, grinning with that gap in my teeth, Grandma Ruth behind me with her hands on my shoulders and her pearls catching the light. It wasn't about the money. It was about rewriting the ending. My grandmother spent her whole life being polite about her own cage. She never left. She never spoke up. She stayed, and she was afraid. And she died in that house surrounded by people who underestimated her. I named a scholarship after her. Let them Google that. Patricia called me 3 days after the fundraiser. I let it ring twice before answering. She was crying before I said hello. "I should have said something years ago. At that Thanksgiving. At every Thanksgiving. I watched your mother do this to you, and I sat there like everyone else. You're saying it now. That counts. It doesn't feel like enough. It's not, but it's a start." Silence. "I need time, Patricia, before we build anything. I appreciate the emails. I appreciate the warning about the fundraiser. But trust isn't a switch. I can't flip it because someone's finally being honest." "I understand." Her voice was small, then steadier. "Can I tell you what happened after you left?" I leaned back in my office chair. "Go ahead." "The town won't stop talking. Everyone's asking the same question. Diane said she was in a facility. She's a COO. Your mother can't walk into the post office without someone bringing it up. Mrs. Callahan told her women's Bible study group. Pastor Briggs hasn't said anything publicly, but he called your mother and asked her to step back from the committee. She lost the chair position? Voluntarily, she says. But everyone knows." I let that settle. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel sorry for her either. "Patricia, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "When you watched my mother forge my signature on that fund, why didn't you stop her?" Dead air. Then, "Because I was afraid she'd do to me what she did to you, and I'm ashamed of that, every day." I believed her. Shame like that doesn't come out smooth. It catches on the way up. "We'll talk again," I said. "Give me time. Take whatever you need." I hung up. And for the first time, the word family didn't taste bitter in my mouth, just complicated. In Ridgewood, reputation is currency, and my mother had just filed for bankruptcy. Within a week of the fundraiser, the narrative that Diane Lawson had spent 7 years constructing, the troubled daughter, the brave mother, the family united in prayer, came apart like wet paper. The post office, the diner, the pharmacy parking lot, the pews at First Presbyterian. Every gathering place in a small town became a courtroom, and Diane was on trial in absentia. She told us her daughter was in rehab. Did you see the Forbes thing? A COO? I prayed for that girl every Sunday for 3 years. Diane stood right next to me and let me. And the scholarship? Named after Ruth? My goodness! The information moved through Ridgewood the way all information moves through small towns. Not as gossip exactly, but as a collective recalibration. People were adjusting the picture in their heads. The story they'd believed for 7 years was being replaced, frame by frame, by a different one. And the new story didn't need Diane's narration to spread. It spread because it was true. Pastor Briggs called my mother personally. The conversation, according to Patricia, was gentle but final. Maybe take a step back from the committee, Diane. Just for a season. Give people time. She resigned the chair position publicly, told people it was time to focus on family. The irony sat in that sentence like a stone in a shoe. Gerald, for his part, did something I never expected. He moved into the guest bedroom. Not a separation, not a divorce, just a door, closed, between him and the woman he'd enabled for 30 years. Patricia said she overheard him one evening through the kitchen window. You lied, Diane, about your own daughter. You told this whole town she was broken, and she stood on that stage and proved you wrong without saying your name. Diane's response, according to Patricia, she turned this entire town against me. Gerald's response, no, you did that yourself, 7 years ago. She just showed up. It was the first honest sentence my father had spoken in my lifetime. Too late to save us. But maybe, not too late to save himself. Meredith lost the house. Without a co-signer, the loan fell through. The bank completed the foreclosure 60 days later. She packed what she could into a rented storage unit and moved back into our parents' house on Sycamore Drive, into my old room. I heard this from Patricia, who told it to me with the careful tone of someone reporting on a building collapse. Factual, slightly odd, not unsympathetic. She's sleeping in your room, Selena, the one with the nail holes where your posters used to be. I didn't say anything for a long time. Is there still a mark on the wall by the closet, from where I measured my height every birthday? I don't know, probably. The golden child, the one who got the fund, the car, the sorority dues, the toast at Thanksgiving, the first hug, the second hug, the assumption that she would always be fine, was now 32 years old, divorced, unemployed, and sleeping in the room of the sister she'd never defended. Did I feel satisfaction? A little. I'm human. But mostly I felt something sadder. The recognition that Meredith had never been given the tools to build anything on her own. Every scaffolding in her life had been my mother's construction. The school that was chosen for her. The job that was arranged through connections. The fund money that was redirected to cover her expenses. And when the scaffolding came down, there was nothing underneath. No muscle. No callus. No resilience. Being the golden child, it turns out, is its own kind of cage. You just don't notice the bars because they're gilded. Meredith didn't apologize. Patricia said she was telling people, if Selena had just helped, none of this would have happened. Still blaming, still pointing, still a Lawson. But Patricia also said something that stayed with me. She said that one night, she saw Meredith standing in the doorway of my old room, running her finger along a nail hole in the wall. The one where I'd hung Grandma Ruth's photo. She stood there for a long time, and she didn't say a word. Kyle's reckoning came from an unexpected direction. His girlfriend, Tara, a dental hygienist from the next town over, saw the Facebook post. The one calling me ungrateful. The one that got 41 likes and made Kyle feel like a righteous brother standing up for family values. Tara didn't like it. "You publicly shamed your own sister for not giving you money," she told him. According to Kyle's own account later, relayed through Patricia, Tara said it while packing an overnight bag. "That's not who I want to be with." Kyle deleted the post, but the internet remembers what people wish it wouldn't. Screenshots had already circulated through Ridgewood's unofficial text chains, the ones that move faster than the town newspaper ever did. He was 27 years old and learning for the first time that actions on a screen have weight in the real world. Gerald's letter arrived at my office 6 weeks after the fundraiser. It came by mail, not email, not text. A white envelope with his handwriting on the front, careful, slanted, the penmanship of a man who never writes letters and had to think about every word. I opened it at my desk. "Selena, I don't know if I have the right to say this, but I'm sorry. Not for your mother. For me. For sitting in that chair and saying nothing. For every time I told you, don't make your mother upset when I should have told her to stop. I wasn't keeping the peace. I was keeping my comfort. You deserved a father who chose you, even when it was loud. I didn't, and I'll carry that." I read it twice, set it in my desk drawer, didn't respond. It was the first apology I'd received from a Lawson, from the person I expected it from last. 3 months after the fundraiser. Portland, a Sunday evening in June. I'm standing in my kitchen, stirring a pot of pasta, while Jess argues with my neighbor Dave about whether hot sauce belongs on garlic bread. Margaret is on my couch with a glass of red wine, telling a story about a grant proposal that went sideways in the most spectacular fashion. 2 other colleagues from the office are setting my dining table, the one I bought at an estate sale in Selwood, 6 chairs, oak, scratched and imperfect, and mine. This is my Sunday dinner, every week. Same people, give or take. No obligations, no performances. No one here because they have to be. Everyone here because they want to be. I look around the table when we sit down, and I think about another table, a longer one, set with better china, in a house in Ohio where I was invisible. This table is smaller. The plates don't match. The wine is $12 a bottle, and I have never felt more seen in my life. Gerald's letter sits in my desk drawer at work. I haven't replied. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. I'm letting that decision take whatever shape it needs to, and I'm not rushing it. Diane hasn't contacted me since my email. Meredith hasn't either. Kyle sent a one-word text 2 weeks ago. "Sorry. No period. No follow-up." I saw it. I haven't responded. I don't know what happens next with any of them. And for the first time in my life, I'm okay with not knowing. The door isn't locked, but it isn't open either. It's just there, waiting for someone to knock with something more than 2 words. Until then, I have pasta. I have wine. I have this table. That's enough. If you're still listening, and I hope you are, I want to say something directly to you, if you recognize any of this. The scapegoat role, the voicemails that only come when someone needs something, the narrative that someone else wrote about your life while you were still living it, the family that doesn't call on your birthday but calls the moment they see a dollar sign. You're not crazy, you're not ungrateful, you're not selfish. Those words, the ones they throw at you when you refuse to shrink, those words are the sound of people losing control of a story they never had the right to tell. The 2 words my family said were, "Help me." The 2 words I needed to hear were, "I'm sorry." They're not the same sentence, and you don't owe anyone the first until they've given you the second. I used to think family was about loyalty, about showing up no matter what, about swallowing your own voice so the table stays quiet and everyone can pretend the silence is peace. Now I know better. Family is about choice. Real family, the kind worth keeping, chooses you on purpose, not out of obligation, not out of guilt, not because your name is useful on a loan application. The bravest thing I ever did wasn't walking out that door with $200 in my pocket and snow on the ground. It was not walking back in when they finally called, and all they had to offer was 2 words that weren't an apology. My name is Selena Lawson. I'm 30 years old, and the most expensive thing I own isn't a title or a salary. It's the silence I can finally afford. Grandma Ruth once told me, the quietest person in the room is usually the one paying the most attention. She was right.